When it comes to karate dojos in the valley, there can be only one. Season 5 of Cobra Kai picks up right where Season 4 leaves off, but does it deliver in the nostalgia-fueled dramatic action of those previous seasons? Following the shocking results of the All-Valley tournament, Season 5 finds Terry Silver expanding the Cobra Kai empire and trying to make his no-mercy style of karate the only game in town. With Kreese behind bars and Johnny Lawrence setting karate aside to focus on repairing the damage he's caused, Daniel LaRusso must call on an old friend for help. So we've now got Terry Silver running things over at Cobra Kai after getting Kreese arrested and then out of the picture. Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang combo, they lost the All-Valley tournament, which meant that Daniel and Johnny have to shut the doors to their dojos. And also, amidst the drama of the adults and the kids, Miguel took off to Mexico to find his father, despite his mom telling him not to go. Now, if you've been a fan of the first 4 seasons of Cobra Kai, then this is bringing more of what you've come to expect. There's karate, angst, both from the teenagers and the adults, plus some melodrama, and a good help in the nostalgia. Now, the 4th season didn't bowl me over. I was actually getting a bit tired of that rinse and repeat scenario that's just created by the cyclical issues our characters were finding themselves in. Season 5, though, breaks out of this routine, and I love how the focus is more on the adults and their situations. There are still storylines that involve the kids, and they're not wholly forgotten in this season, but I do appreciate that more of the focus comes back to the adult characters. Now, the fight sequences are a lot of fun. I love that in a lot of the fights, the movements are shown in context and scope, rather than just edited with a ton of quick cuts. And there are still sequences that do employ those quick cuts, and some of those actually allow us to build excitement and energy, but at least there's a good mix of full action sequences with that faster editing. Plus, there are a decent amount of fight sequences that are spread throughout the show. I don't think there's a single episode that doesn't feature at least one fight, and some have several. I mean, it keeps the adrenaline up, and it makes for some exciting watching. Now, some of the scenes with the adults fighting do feel slowed down and way more choreographed than what we get with the younger actors. It's what I expected, so it's nothing that's a disappointment. It's just a bit noticeable that the speed is drastically different in the fight scenes depending on who's actually doing the fighting. Now, the charisma of the cast is great to watch, and I'm really enjoying the dynamic between Johnny and Daniel. I mean, for the majority, they are now working together, getting along, and they're making a great team. I mean, there's even a scene with some insightful dialogue between the two, and I love that moment for our characters. The antagonism that was back and forth between them was getting old, or at least it was repetitive, so it's good to see their growth now. And I love that we're watching small growth over all of the seasons with William Zabka's Johnny. I mean, he's still stuck in the past for most of his behaviors and his mindsets, but he's working to change. And that's what makes him such an easy character to root for. He's relatable in the fact that he's very flawed, but trying to improve. And that's a theme that permeates this 5th season. We have many characters experiencing some huge growth, and mainly for the better. The characters are finally having all of their interactions and lessons just sink in, giving them a much more mature outlook on the world. And even if sometimes those in authority over them aren't really being great role models. And I mean, speaking of terrible role models, Thomas Ian Griffiths as Terry Silver, I mean, he's such a great slimy antagonist. I mean, we as the audience can see through every smarmy word that he utters, but I love that the drama that's created when Silver manipulates the situations and the characters around him. And as much as we're meant to dislike Kreese in the show, Silver's an even worse bad guy. I think it's mainly because of his deviousness. Now, Kreese was way more straightforward in his deeds, so they were still bad, but not as shrewd as Silver. And then speaking of Kreese, when we do get some scenes with him this season, some is through flashbacks and then others are happening within the present. Now, there was this one scene that was executed so awesomely because Kreese is telling the story and he's kind of reliving these memories. And the transitions that are used, they felt seamless and they became very impactful due to the words that are being spoken to him. But there was a flashback scene that I just did have a lot of trouble with. A sequence takes place in 1980 between Silver and Kreese, and in that flashback, the production uses the younger actor who portrayed Kreese while he was in Vietnam. The problem I had that almost broke me out of the moment was that The Karate Kid took place in 1984, so just 4 years after this flashback. But the Kreese from '84 looks much older than the Kreese from 1980 in this flashback. Now, I'm curious at how it would have been if we'd seen Martin Kove in this flashback. Maybe do some de-aging work to just make him look closer to how he did in The Karate Kid. Now, maybe that would have been even more distracting. I don't know. I mean, it's just something that bothered me in that moment, but it wasn't something enough that ruined the entire show for me. Now, some of the melodrama between the kids did become a bit laughable, especially in how some of the characters were being directed. Kenny Payne is constantly brooding and has this look that somebody has perpetually been eating his sandwich while smashing his toe. I mean, his posture is meant to be menacing. He's like, ooh, but I found it funnier than anything. I really wish the directors would have guided him in just a different direction so that he could still be powerful and intimidating without looking like he has this hanger still stuck in his shirt. And while they're not dominating the show, there are some overly dramatic meetings in a couple of episodes where it looks like our characters are either planning a coup or trying to figure out where a nuclear strike should happen. Now, luckily, the show also recognizes this silliness and then uses these as the setup for some humor. There are 10 episodes and they range from 30 to 48 minutes, so there is quite the range when you're binging. Now, I found it very easy to keep going from episode to episode, especially because the tone of the entire show is able to balance the drama and the angst with the humor and the action. Not all the humor lands, and many times it's more cheesy than funny, but that in itself caused me to smile. And there's so much 80s nostalgia in this, even if it's not harkening back to the 80s. I mean, some of the mindsets and the executions feel very much like an 80s action movie. There's this group of senseis that arrive, and they rarely, if ever, speak. And they just stand in the background of the scene, just giving off this aura of power and intimidation. I mean, it's exactly what you'd see with a bad guy and his henchmen in some of those 80s action flicks. So overall, Season 5 of Cobra Kai still retains a lot of the feels of an angsty soap opera, but it infuses enough nostalgia with likable characters and enjoyable action to keep this from languishing in the melodramatic tropes of a true soap. The actors create relatable characters, despite being put into situations that no one will ever experience. The fight choreography is exciting to watch, creating a mix of realism and escapism all at the same time. This new season reinvigorated my love for the show, and I'm excited to see where the story continues from here. There's no sex, very, very brief nudity, a lot of profanity, and a bunch of violence. I give Season 5 of Cobra Kai 4.5 out of 5 couches. So who is your favorite character in the show? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.